And we are here for Monday mornings with Matt and Kevin. Except, well, Matt's not here. Matt is sick as a dog. He has been up all night. He's got fevers, he's got coughing, he's got sore throat, he's got all this nasty stuff. So say a prayer for Matt. Matt is down for the count. Hopefully, he will be back next week. If he's not back next week, then well, he is really sick. So I think he'll be back. I think he's on the mend slowly. Just got one of these, these November flus, I think, as far as I know. I don't think it's the C word or anything, but yeah, please say a prayer for Matt. Say a prayer for anyone dealing with these flu things over the season. Everyone knows that's no fun. Anyone with kids as well. It just seems like November is just the time where everyone starts getting sick. And well, I'm joined today by someone who knows all about kids having flus, and that is my good friend, Caveman Kosovich. Eric, what's up? How are you doing? Today we're going to talk about politics. We're going to kind of have a conversation. We're going to have a lot more of a laid back, not very organized chat because, well, I don't have a lot of time to edit things, and that's how we roll. So how you doing?
Good. Yeah, it's good if it's laid back because I haven't done any studying or anything either. So
I never do any studying. I never do.
Gotcha.
The beauty is that I can make it sound like I have a real plan, that I'm like, I don't like to do any study because it's good because I have the same view as my audience. And it sounds really well thought out. And it's honestly just because I'm lazy and I don't really want to do any study. And so, but if you can sound better, let's sound better.
Yeah.
But on Tuesday, so today we're recording this on Monday. So that's tomorrow already. Good grief. This is crazy how fast this is coming. Is the midterm elections. And so I know we've talked about this before with Matt, but I'm curious, what's your overall impression about the election season? I know you hear a lot of this red wave coming and stuff. What do you think in general, just very general, what's going to happen?
Yeah, no, I think the talk of a red wave is legitimate, right? We look back in 2016 when we had red waves and we took the presidency, House, and Senate. And before that vote, all the polls and everything were saying it's not going to be a red wave at all, right? Polling is infamous, really, for polling Democrats higher than Republicans.
Right.
Polling is an art, and I think the people doing the polling usually kind of put their finger on the scale a little bit. But the fact that the polling is showing that Republicans are actually, a red wave is on the way. And the fact you take that into consideration with the idea that they usually poll higher for Democrats, and that's even a better sign. Better meaning, obviously if you're pro-Republican. So I think the likely outcome is that the Republicans will take the House, which is nice. The Senate is kind of a toss-up because a lot of the Senate races are Republicans who are already holding that seat. Mm-hmm. So, you'd have to overturn some of the Democrat-held seats to actually gain back that majority in the Senate. But even that is looking like it's more likely than it had been, even a couple months ago.
So that could flop too.
What could flop?
The Senate.
Yeah, the Senate could flop. Yeah. No, I think it's probably 50-50 chance at this point if what I'm reading and looking at is correct. So, I think it's something like
Colorado has its own, right? Colorado has a Senate.
Colorado, has a Senate seat up. It is, Michael Bennet is the Democrat incumbent, and Joe O'Dea is the challenger Republican. He's not polling so well. So all of those, what do they call them? Predictions have him as something like a 7-point underdog, which is, not
about even,
not well, it's not unovercomable, but it's also like, no one, even the Republicans, I don't think, are really counting on him actually winning that. So,
and do you think that have things gotten bad enough in Colorado? So where you live, obviously, have they gotten bad enough that you think people are wanting a change?
Colorado, like many states, is really a red state dominated by a blue city. So where I live, where I live in Colorado Springs, even the city of Colorado Springs is fairly conservative. Most of the mountain towns are conservative. The Eastern Plains are very conservative, but we kind of just get overruled and outvoted by the 5 million people in Denver metro area and Boulder and that. So yes, right. I mean, my daily conversations with people that I know and meet at work and everything is, who's actually voting these Democrats in, and then you go up to Denver and it's pretty obvious.
Yeah. So, but it seems like, I mean, and obviously I'm watching this from afar now, but it seems like with the economy and with even the border. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of different issues that people are really ticked about. And I think in education's been a big. I don't know
Mhm.
in Colorado, but I've seen that nationally. That's a big thing that the Democrats really stepped on it. They really put their
Mhm.
foot in it, trying to push this just absolutely insane agenda in education. And I
Mhm.
think people are really. I think parents are really freaking out and saying no.
What's really crazy is that I don't think it's a whole lot more insane than it was 3, 4 years ago, right? I mean, they were starting all this stuff back then. COVID is what really saved it from that perspective, right? Because now the kids are learning from their laptops at home and parents are actually listening in. Parents are at home, due to the COVID lockdowns and everything, having time to listen. So I think that really backfired because it just really shone a magnifying glass. And then ever since then, it's been one of the top issues. But yeah, you're right. With inflation, which is ridiculous, and, energy prices, and yeah, the state of the general economy. Yeah, the woke stuff is starting to get more backlash than push, at least from a majority opinion.
Well, and I've seen
All of
that
those.
in sorry, real quick, and this may be something we talk about a little bit later, but I've seen that in media. You see, like the Lord of the Rings show, that
Mhm.
the
Rings
Rings
of
of
Power.
Power, and I've seen lately, I've seen several articles saying that it got less and less money as it went, and so each
Mhm.
episode got less viewers and less, obviously, then less money, and that's pretty interesting, and I think that really does show you that these producers really tried to push this agenda. So did the politics. They really tried to
Mhm.
push this, feminine, feminist, really
Intersectional
in,
feminism. Yep.
exactly, really, really woke, extreme woke. And I think it's really starting to tick people off. I mean, and not even just you and me. I mean, you and we are born and raised, deep, deep conservative,
We are very
tradition.
sheltered.
Not even conservative. I would say we are deep traditionalists. I mean, and I think
Mhm.
that's even different than conservative. But I think even your liberals, your actual liberals, are starting to say, "Whoa, this is what are we doing?"
What are we doing? This isn't fun anymore. Really, that's what it kind of takes, right? When
Right?
all your superhero movies aren't even fun anymore and they're just preachy. Yeah, no, and there is a turning of the tide there too, right? I forget, what is it? The Warner Brothers owns like the DC universe, and I don't know if you heard, they were making a Batwoman movie, and they had made the entire thing, and it was super super woke. The main character was, of a certain persuasion, and they actually like spent 80 million on it, and then canned it. Like they shut it down, they threw it out, didn't even
Crazy.
release it to try to make back their money because they knew it was so bad and no one would like it. And that's DC, right? They don't make good movies. I don't know if you've seen
Right.
any of their
Right.
others. So like they're waking up to it. I think really the only media giant that doesn't show signs that it's waking up to it is the Disney,
Yeah.
because they keep going at it. But I think they'll see it too.
Netflix
Eventually,
maybe too.
maybe Netflix. I don't know, but I think eventually the dollar always wins. And what's kind of interesting is that even that is against them now at this point.
But that's kind of my point, right? I mean, I think that's a really good point, that eventually, no matter how crazy and how woke they get, they just want to make money. I mean, I mean, you're gonna have some of these really crazy,
Hmm.
blue-haired feminists who are running certain, projects. But if these blue-haired feminists aren't making money for these companies are going to fire the blue-haired feminists.
Hmm.
These companies have they have no soul, they have no agenda but to make money. That's for sure. Now, I think that they have gotten into this weird idea, and I think it's because they get so connected with Hollywood and Twitter that they think people think the way Hollywood and Twitter think, which is
Hmm.
absolutely insane. It's just not true.
Hmm.
And so I think that they're disconnected from reality.
Yeah, and that's one of the downsides of Twitter, right? And like just unlimited, everyone can say everything, and there's no checks on it, right? So if you look at Twitter, you say, wow, 70% of the country likes the blue haired feminism stuff. Like we
Right.
want 70% of the people's money rather than 30%. So let's make blue haired feminist products. um, and I don't know if they're realizing it or if they're just, letting the numbers talk or whatever. But I think that tide is turning and they're realizing, oh, you know what? Only 20-30% of the people actually believe this blue haired feminist stuff. Let's make Top Gun Maverick and, movies like that are not gross.
Right, exactly. And I think you're slowly starting to say, look at sports too. I mean, you and I are both big
Hmm.
sports fans, and for several years there, I'd say 5 years, this agenda of this political agenda, you know, the Colin Kaepernick agenda was
Mhm.
really pushed. I mean, for maybe not 5, but let's say 3 or 4 years, and it was really pushed hard by the NFL, especially, but others too. And it hurt them. I mean, it
Mhm.
hurt their
A
bottom
lot.
dollar. And I mean, the NFL has survived because they've got the biggest, by far the biggest sport in America. It's not even close, but it still hurt. And I think that they're starting to see it just doesn't make any money. I mean, it just doesn't make
Mhm.
any sense. And that's beautiful to see. And again, back to politics, I really get the sense that most of Americans, even your you know your middle people who don't really they're not Trump lovers, you know, maybe they're pro this and this. They're all pretty sick of this wokeness.
Mhm. Yeah, and like that's what I'm excited about tomorrow, or however long it takes to count the votes in some of these races,
Right?
but
Week or two.
week or two, um, is just to see that actually translate to something that's good, right? And then that's something we have to be thankful for as Americans, right? That we actually do have that opportunity because a lot of countries don't. A lot
Yeah.
of countries, if it's getting pushed or this or that is getting pushed, and you can vote, and but you really can't change the outcome. We have to be really grateful that not only can we change the outcome with our vote, but with our speaking and talking to others, and you know that type of thing.
Well, and it's an interesting point because I've seen a lot lately. I had a Twitter poll just asking, will people vote? Yet simply yes or no, and I think it ended up being 61% yes, and then obviously 39% no, and that's
Is
a high percentage of no.
is that like a poll that you saw, or is that a poll that you put out to
I
like your
posted, and
followers?
I think it got a
Oh,
few hundred. So it was only a
okay.
few hundred, but that was from my followers and people who would have seen it from others. So
Uh,
usually people who come from my type of
mhm.
thinking, and many of I think it was around I guess 40% or so.
That's
Um,
disappointing.
I was surprised, and I think that you and I both agree, which makes pretty boring conversations. But I mean, I maybe why are you pro voting?
Because that's sort of a responsibility. It's a civic duty, not only just as a citizen of the United States, but as a Catholic. Pope Pius XII said that not only is it an obligation, but it's a grave obligation to vote in elections, and for the betterment of your country as your fatherland or motherland. Um, Father Zepeda had a good sermon. I don't know if he's posted it yet on his wire, but regarding the love of country and the trying to do the best you can for the country is actually being tied to the fourth commandment. In
Hmm.
the same way, right? Honor thy father and thy mother. You honor your parents and you try to do what's best for them. You should also honor your fatherland in that same way, right? Saying, well, the system is corrupt and they're cheating on the vote counting anyway, and what's good is that going to do? It just needs it basically needs a miracle to turn it around. That's Imagine your mother or father is sick and dying, and you say that same thing,
True.
right? It's just an irresponsible and a really a wrong thing to do.
Well, and I criticize a lot of the American political system. I mean, democracy, liberalism, a lot of it was criticized and even almost condemned by the Catholic Church. But it's not like, hey, American politics is condemned, and so thus you can't vote. I mean, of course, that was never done. It was kind of like, yeah, the liberal system and pretty much if you are a government that is not, acting with the Catholic Church, then you are in
Which is no
error.
government. Yeah.
Exactly. It's exactly right. So, but it has not been condemned like communism. So, if you're a communist, then you know for certain you are wrong. If you are an active communist, you are against the Catholic Church. You are in
Mm-hmm.
sin. But it's not the case with democracy. Now, I'm not a fan of democracy,
Mm-mm.
but I think you're living in a what's the word? Almost a childish universe. Not childish. That's not the right word. But not reality. What is the reality? Where are we? What do we actually live in? It's not just what we want. What
Mm-hmm.
is the reality?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very much burying their head in the sand like an ostrich, right? Like, I don't like this. This doesn't match my idea of the perfect utopia. Therefore, I'm going to not be involved, right? I'm going to go bury my head in the sand and let my country rot more than it would than if I were fighting for it. So it's a very, I'm trying to think of the word that you're trying to think of, but predestination kind of approach where it's like, I'm not going to make any difference. The country's already going to hell in a handbasket.
Right.
I'm not even going to try.
Well, and I think, I really think, if you start looking into conspiracy theories, and I'm a big conspiracy theorist,
I know
fully,
you are.
I'll fully
I
admit
still
it.
love you.
I know, right? And I think, and I really get behind a lot, some of them, but they have to make sense. But I really think that there are a lot of conspiracy theories, quote unquote, that have been pushed out into the wide world in order to, first of all, discredit some of the true conspiracies, like I think JFK, others that I think absolutely just don't make any sense. Don't go down the road with me with JFK.
Yeah,
you cannot
I
tell
wasn't
me
going down the road at all.
That was
You've been
one
going down
shooter.
this
That
road.
was not one shooter. That was totally done by his own government or by, maybe Cuba, I guess. But anyway, I mean, but I think that the CIA, whoever, throws these things out there to try to muddy the waters. And I totally think one of them, it drives me crazy. I see this on social media all the time. This hand symbols thing, the Freemasons. Every single person is a Freemason if I don't like them. I don't know if you've seen this. Like, Donald Trump holds his hands. No one can see me. We don't have cameras on today, but in this triangle formation, and they're like, oh, see, I told you. He's a Freemason. It's just like, come on. I mean, just because you don't like the guy, and because, and hey, I don't love Trump. I think Trump did a lot of stupid things, and he says a ton of stupid things. But knock off the whole idea that everyone you don't like, or everyone who kind of says one thing or holds their hands
directly communicating with the devil.
Totally. Yes. It's just not realistic. And it's just, and this is where conspiracy theories bring you. And I see this happen so often. And I've gone down this road, and I've fortunately come back from it. But the more conspiracy theories you believe in, and the more you buy into it, the more you start doubting everything. You start doubting everything that's ever happened. You start saying, well, that can't be, because they, quote unquote, say it's true. And eventually you start saying the earth is flat. Eventually you start saying Trump is a lizard person. And it becomes so ridiculous that you go sit at home and, as you said, bury your head like an ostrich. Here's
a conspiracy theory for you, one that I might actually hold to.
Rubbing my
Pretend you're
together.
Someone on the extreme left, whether just super, super liberal or actually evil. What would be a better way to keep people from becoming traditional Catholics than to have the majority of traditional Catholics believe that the earth is flat and that, there are lizard people living under the earth and that type of thing, right? What would be a better way? Because, because I'm sure, I don't know if you have this out in Germany, but in America, maybe not every Sunday, but, multiple times a month, we have new people coming to the church, and, they're from the Novus Ordo or even non-Catholics at all. And they're coming in just trying to find the truth and trying to learn. And they go to mass and they see the beautiful mass, they hear the beautiful sermon, and they're all filled up. And then they go and talk to the people afterwards, and they say, oh, well, don't talk to so-and-so because they're a lizard person. Or, the earth is flat. Right. And they just want us to believe that it's round. That's a huge red flag. And well, obviously that's not true. Obviously traditional Catholicism isn't true, because they believe all this other silly stuff. So there's my conspiracy theory for you. I think we are better served. Well, everyone is always better served. Like, the truth matters. Right. And a lot of these conspiracy theories, maybe some of them are true. I know some of them are not. But holding to them just because it fits what we want to believe, our simplistic, view of the world. Not only is it not serving those potential converts who will get, put off by it, but it also doesn't serve the truth. And we should care about
and it doesn't serve
is.
You. Exactly. I mean, it doesn't serve you either, because I mean, even if, let's even say we're kind of going down a road right here, but let's say the earth is flat,
Sure.
I mean, and let's just say it's true. I mean, okay. I mean, great, cool. I mean, so what's the point? And that's my point with, and that's where I've finally crossed the road where I say, I will only buy into a conspiracy theory if I say there's a reason for me to get behind it, and there's a reason for it to have happened. JFK, there is absolutely 100% a reason for that to have been done by his own government. Doesn't mean it was. I don't know. I'm not sure it was, but that makes sense to me. Doesn't make sense that it was done by one gunman, etc. But you start getting into these other things. It's like, why would they lie about a flat Earth? Why? I mean,
how does that affect people?
What does it affect? Well, it's because they just want to lie about everything. Why? I mean, what's the point? And eventually it gets so ridiculous that you're totally right. And I think that, look, if you and I'm coming to Colorado soon, and you and I can sit around a table and drink a whiskey and talk about flat Earth, Cool. I mean, that's a private conversation. I mean, that's but you're so right that you got to be so careful how you talk about these things with people that you don't know. You don't know. I mean, if it's just an offhanded comment, for you it's like, yeah, sure, I don't trust any of these guys. Trump's a Freemason. Okay, but I mean, you don't know who you're having an effect on, and this is the great evil of social media.
Yes, right. This is a problem that didn't exist 20 years ago,
Totally.
even 10 years ago. All right. I mean, people can have all of these opinions or all these beliefs, and that's fine, right? As long as you are trying to be, as long as you think you are following a logical path to get to those decisions, right? What scares me a little bit is, this is my team, right? I follow these XYZ on social media or whatever, and everything they say is obviously true. And then you just become, you become as mind numbed a zombie as many on the left are, where all you're doing is just feeding in, these talking points, regurgitating them out without doing any thinking or any research yourself, right? And thinking is the more important of the two, right? What do you research, right? Right now, I could start researching, is the earth flat? And half the sites I go to will probably be full of bunk,
Right.
So, I hear people say that a lot too. Like, oh, I've done the research. Where have you done the research?
Well, here's a good example. I had a show about Nazism, and I was against Nazism, against fascism, against Mussolini, against Hitler. Right? You'd think this is really basic stuff. And I had on two historians. One of them is a historian in Munich. He is working on his doctorate in Munich. He is a German historian. What do you think? Do you think he might know a little bit about the Nazis?
No,
Maybe?
I don't know. Like they own the universities. Everything that they learned was from the universities owned by them.
I'm not kidding, Eric. This is seriously. People in the comment section were like,
"Oh, I know.
Yeah,
I know.
these guys are just brainwashed. Have you seen this video on YouTube? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I mean, it's like, first of all,
it's that death spiral, right?
Oh,
it's that death spiral. It's like, oh, I've heard that myself. Like, oh, you're an engineer, so you believe in all this chemistry stuff. And it's like, well, yes, I believe in the chemistry stuff. I took 5 years of schooling for it, and then but those professors, they're all evil. They're just teaching you all this stuff, and you don't actually know it. You just believe what they taught you. And I understand the logical, like, if you truly believe that every institution in the world is run by Satan, and every professor and every school admin and everything is like personally worships him on their off hours, then I can see the validity in that argument. But if that's your worldview,
but I mean, if that's your worldview, I don't even care. Then go bury your head in the sand. But I mean, if you're trying to argue, like actually argue with me, and your argument is, hey, these two historians who are good Catholic guys who I can actually vouch for myself. They are good Catholic men who actually want truth and have wanted truth since they were being educated. And you're trying to tell me that they're just a bunch of idiots who are brainwashed because you watched a video on YouTube? That's your argument? I mean, go home, shut off all of your social media, turn off your computer, and pray. I mean that seriously. I mean, get out of it. And it's such a dangerous thing because, again, people are so turned off to voting and stuff, and they're turned off to Trump. And again, I'm not even a Trump fan. I think Trump did some good things.
Yeah,
I think you would agree. He did some good things. He did some bad things. I'm not a Trump worshiper. Would I vote for him again? Possibly. I mean, if it's Trump versus Biden, yes,
it would be. Yes, it would be a hold your nose vote for him. Sure, but yeah,
sure.
Would I prefer almost any other Republican instead of him to run in 20?
Right. I mean, I hope it's DeSantis. Is DeSantis perfect? No, he's not perfect. But you know what? I think
no one's perfect.
Exactly. And he does some good things. He says some good things. He says some bad things. I mean, you're not going to get a perfect. And again, it's get out of the. I started reading a book called the Benedict Option, and it's kind of this idea. And I didn't finish it because I just didn't like it. It's this idea. It's pretty much this idea of, hey, leave society. Leave society. Hey, just leave it. It's terrible. Don't be part of it. That doesn't work. And as you said, Pope Pius XII said exactly the opposite. He said, do not leave society. Society will fall apart. Society will be ruined if the good men, the strong men in society do nothing.
Yeah. And it's the same, going back to the fourth commandment analogy, right? That's like saying, oh, my father is an alcoholic and he's, always angry and grumpy and I hate being around him and everything. I'm just going to like leave him and go away and live my own life. That's not the Catholic thing to do. That's not the charitable thing to do. It is actually against the fourth commandment to do that. It's the exact same situation with your country, right? I don't like it. It's bad. It bothers me. It doesn't fit my ideal of what society should look like. Therefore, I'm just going to go away and create my own. Yeah, we all understand that inclination. We all have that, we all long for perfect happiness. And so we try to make the best we can in this world, but we're not going to get that here. There has never been a perfect Catholic society, right? There have been Catholic societies and there have been good Catholic societies, but it's never been perfect because it's been ruled by men who are all sinners.
Well, and how do we expect, and this is what drives me crazy, how do we expect to ever get out of it if we just stay at home and do nothing? I mean, I think this bothers me about a lot of Sede Ve contests, because a lot of Sede Ve contests, their idea of how we solve anything is the end of the world. I don't need to proselytize. I don't need to teach. I don't need to vote because, well, it's clearly the great apostasy and the world is ending. Do you want to know when the great apostasy probably started? Well, it for sure was, if anything is true, it's probably in 1962. That was 60 years ago. Are we still, or more even?
1958 is usually what I do, right? Pope Pius XII.
And so are we starting to say, oh yeah, well, yeah, it's been ending since 1958, so it's definitely going to end next year. It's definitely going to end in the next 5. Says who? We have no idea. And this mindset of let's go just curl ourselves into a ball and wait for the world to end. Mm-hmm. I'm not even saying it's wrong. I'm going to tell you it is not Catholic. It is not Catholic. It is not the Catholic way. Christ said, go forth and teach all nations. Live the Catholic faith, for goodness sake. Don't go and hide. Oh, it drives me crazy.
And remember, St. Paul thought the world was ending.
Right.
St. Paul thought like, oh, these are the end times. Christ has come. And he used that as an opportunity to do the best he could, right? He was shipwrecked and running all around all these different countries, all these different places, trying to like teach before the world ended. Like we're doing the exact opposite of St. Paul. If we're saying, oh, it's the end of the world, well, these people can just kind of figure it out themselves. I'm just going to go hide in my bunker.
Right. And I have a great respect for priests, especially and bishops who are out there finding new, that they're forming new schools and new churches and really out there. Someone emails them and says, hey, can you bring us the sacraments? The priests aren't just like, it's not worth it. Don't just stay at home. But I see this. I really see this from Catholics. And eventually this is going to end up in a home alone mindset, this idea of, I don't want to go anywhere because the world's just going to end. And it's so counterproductive. And I truly think a part of how that begins is saying, I'm not going to vote. I don't want to vote because nobody's perfect. And I've seen some people on Twitter say that it is a mortal sin to vote. I mean, prove that to me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, prove that. Prove that to Pope Pius XII.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's scary, right? So you said 40% of your, of that poll said they weren't planning on voting, right? And that was only a couple hundred people, but let's expand that out, right? There's more than a couple hundred people who hold the basically our same basic viewpoints, right? Your audience and us, there's probably 100,000, 200,000 people in the country that more or less hold that sort of position, right? Of being a traditionalist, conservative, Catholic. 40% of that is a large number. And how many races potentially could be lost? Not, maybe not presidency, but, individual House of Representatives, Senate seats, or just, intercity districts and stuff. How many of those are lost because of that lack of voting?
Well,
and then really you're contributing to the problem. You can't say, well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If you don't vote, shut up. I don't want to hear from you ever. I mean, I don't want to hear from you for the next couple of years. I mean, especially if you purposely didn't vote. If there was some other reason, like
you get sick or something.
Yeah. But I mean, if you purposely said, I just don't want to vote because I don't want to have anything to do with it, then okay, don't have anything to do with the rules that are going to come. Don't have anything to do with the Democrat who's going to get in, who's going to raise all your taxes, who's going to fund abortion, who's going to put your money that you're paying into abortion. How does that feel? Is that something are you happy with? Passively participating in that? Give me a break. I just these arguments are I think they're so ridiculous, and I think again it's because they get down this hole of these rabbit holes of well, it's all fake anyway. It's all
and the whole thing is really a sub form of despair.
Yeah.
Right. I mean ultimately when you say what is wrong with this viewpoint of the world. It's against hope, really.
Right.
Same way presumption would be, same way despair is. And it's, not personal despair, but it is a despair of, how do I say this, right? Everything that happens is either, willed or allowed by God.
Right.
And to say, hey, the society we lived in is so jacked up, I'm not going to try to fix it, and yet know that God has allowed it for a greater good somehow. We don't understand that. Right? That's basically putting yourself before God. Like, I know what's going on with society better than God does.
Totally.
So,
well, and again, if we want a Catholic society, let's say, I would like a monarchy. I'd love a Catholic monarchy that works, in union with a true pope. Of course I would. I mean, it's again, if you ask any Catholic that, true Catholic, of course they're going to say yes, because that's the ideal. That is what we want, even though that didn't always work either. So, I mean, it's not like Catholic monarchies were always perfect, for goodness sake.
All it takes is one Catholic monarch to decide he wants a second wife, and
Totally.
you have a big issue.
100%. 100%. And so you see that's not perfect either, but let's say that's what we all want. Then what are we doing? I mean, what is our goal? Do you really think that your ideals, this agenda that you want to fulfill, which may be good, do you really think you're going to achieve that by sitting at home and crying about it? And, oh, I don't like Trump, but I don't like DeSantis. And, it just drives me crazy. I mean, and a lot of these people are people I greatly respect and I like, and I think they have a really good opinions, and I think they're good Catholics, and I think they're just outright wrong on this topic.
Imagine if every tweet that you saw that said something like that, instead of sending that tweet and writing up the tweet, people had, said 3 Hail Marys or something instead.
Yeah.
That would be good.
Sure.
We should ask Musk to develop that, right? Have a 3 Hail Mary option.
I like that. Right.
Deletes your tweet and then leads you in 3 Hail Marys.
That is that would be a win. And I think but it's a really good point. And it's one that comes up often on the podcast, again, is that we're never going to live in a perfect society. We're never going to live perfect lives. We're never going to make every perfect decision. But if that's our goal, which of course it should be, then we should be thinking about every decision we make and considering why we make every decision we make. And I think you got to be careful, again, that you don't overthink it, like the voting thing. I mean, it's, we don't have a perfect option. I mean, I can tell you, I know for a fact that Bishop Pivarunas is also a supporter of voting, firm supporter of it. And you want to know why? Because Pius XII was. And you want to know why? Because he's the last pope. He is our pope. If we're Sede Vacantis, we don't pick and choose. You don't just say, I don't like that part. That's not very nice. So I don't really care. And I know people do that. That's not how this works. This is a monarchy, folks.
And I think it's a little more subtle than, I don't agree with that. I think it's Pope Pius XII didn't live in the times we live in now, right? That's usually the argument that's made. Is if he
lived during the Nazis, come on.
But if he had been here in 2022 and seen all this stuff, he wouldn't have allowed XYZ, and that's foolish, because I mean that really is going against the authority of the church,
right?
And the infallibility and perfectibility. It doesn't matter that he hasn't seen it. As a pope, he was guided from and prevented from error by the Holy Ghost, and the Holy Ghost certainly knew what 2022 was going to look like. Do you think the Holy Ghost would have let him say this if it wasn't going to matter in 60 years when we had no pope?
Exactly. Well, and come on, I mean, and you're totally, 100%. That is the higher way to take it. But also look at it practically. It just drives me crazy. Pius XII, he didn't see these things coming. Have anyone ever looked at the time when he lived? Pius XII lived during the time of one of the greatest, turmoils perhaps in history. You had communism versus fascism almost all over Europe. It was that was the battle. And that was you had two sides.
And you had America aligning with communism against the fascism.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, what on earth is he supposed to do? So you started to tell me that Pius XII, he just didn't know because he didn't face times like that. Times like what? Oh, I mean, what are you even talking about? I mean, people act like Pius XII just sat around eating toast all day long. It drives me crazy. And as you said, I mean, and more importantly, he was the Pope. He is led and guaranteed to be led by the Holy Ghost. Exactly.
Yep, guaranteed to be led by the Holy Ghost. Not to get into the new versus old Holy Week, but that's the argument there. It's sure. I mean, if we were to get a new Pope, they might bring it back to the old Holy Week, but the existing Pope, guided from error by the Holy Ghost, implemented the new Holy Week. I don't know how you argue against that.
You can't go down that road, because if you go down that road, you can start questioning anything that any Pope ever did. Ever.
Mhm.
If a Pope promulgates it, even if you don't like it, even if it smells of heresy or it's a bridge to heresy, if he was a Pope and he promulgated it, then you are bound to follow it. It's
Yep.
not like you can, maybe, you have to. I mean, again, anyone listen, please come. I would love to have, I really want to have on a pro 55 priest and an anti 55 priest, because it is a really interesting discussion. Because I'll tell you, I was very close to being pro pre 55. I
Yeah,
was
because
really
that's
close.
what we prefer, right?
Exactly.
That's obviously.
I prefer it. And I think there are hints of modernism in it. I think that's true.
Mm-hmm.
But the more you look into it, the more you look into what church teaches, and I really did look into it, eventually it's not even a discussion. It's not even a question. You can't question it. He was Pope. He promulgated it. End of story.
And it leads really well into a less controversial, maybe, topic about, the recognize and resist, right? The exact same argument there.
Sure. Yeah,
Where
exactly. And
if he's the Pope,
yep,
then why are we not following?
and I think it's so simple, and that's the beauty of it, though. And that's the beauty of Bishop Pivarunis's positions, that I think people often criticize him for being weak and, he doesn't make any decisions. You know what? His
He's
position
not supposed to be making decisions.
Exactly. And this is why Bishop Pivarunis and the CMRI steadily stay out of conflict generally. They just stay simply going the way they're going. They follow the church teachings, and there's just very little conflict around them. I mean, there was 50 years ago, but there's not really anymore.
Chuckart, yeah.
Yeah, of course. But now there's just not, because Bishop Pivarunis just says, hey, look, I can't say. I'm not the church. I listened to what the church said. He's the last Pope. This is what we're going to do. And that's the beauty of it. And so you and I can say, no, do I like the changes? I don't like going to it. But you know what? I am totally 100% convinced that I'm doing the right thing. If I go to that mass, I have zero question that it is proper and appropriate, and that the priest is doing the right thing. And that's beautiful. And that's something that the R&R cannot have, because the R&R questions everything. And I mean, the R&R, is he the Pope? Is he not the Pope? I mean, but that's the slope you go down, right? It really is. It's a slippery slope. Yep. You can just say, I don't like it.
Yep. Beauty in its simplicity. What is the theme of this little call here? So we went from voting to popes.
It's a good question. Yeah, right. I don't know. Talk about whatever we want to. That's how we do it.
Let's see. What else can I get you on a soapbox about?
Well, I did actually want to ask you about, we were going to talk about Lord of the Rings, but you didn't watch it, the new show, which I have a show coming out this week with Jeffrey. We're gonna do a
Has he watched The Rings of Power?
He watched it. Yeah, he watched it. So we did
him.
a review with it. Yeah, exactly. And but I didn't watch it. You didn't watch it. I mean, I didn't watch it primarily because I boycott Amazon. Did you just not want to have anything to do with it?
No, so yeah, I mean, we don't boycott Amazon. Sorry. But no, it was one of those, like, obviously huge Lord of the Rings fan, all the books, including the Silmarillion, even the Hobbits. Like, really, when the Hobbits came out, it was one of the most disappointing moments in my life, because I was so hoping and,
we saw them together,
wishing that it would be good. Oh, we did. That's
we
right.
Did. And we did. I remember coming out of the theater after the second one, being
just being like, what the heck was that?
What just happened? yeah, totally.
So part of it was just selfish, didn't want to get let down.
Mm-hmm.
And then part of it was just the knowledge, right? I mean, from trailer one, you knew there were going to be stupid things in it, basically. So kind of took the cautious approach and was like, I don't want to judge a book by its cover. It might be okay. Let's just wait until the reviews for a couple of them come out. And, it was pretty obvious even after the first couple of episodes, and it only got worse. So, I've followed, I know the basic story. I know the basic tropes. I don't know if we're doing spoilers or not, but basically it was just as bad as everyone had feared. And so then it's like, well, why would I go watch that? I don't want to get my soul sucked out. And that's a lot of time too.
Well, and the fact that they spent $1 billion or $500 million,
so $60 million per episode is the number.
Crazy, just insane. And from what I've heard, again, we both haven't seen it, but it's just not that good. It's not well acted. It's not well directed. The writing is terrible. And this is and I think this is actually a really nice thing in a way, and I'm really glad that it failed, because people really thought they had the talent and the genius to be able to take Tolkien's characters and the name of the show, add on everything else, and it would be just as good. They really thought that. They really thought they could be as genius as Tolkien. And you know what? You can't.
Yeah, exactly.
And part of it is because, and I heard a really good critique. Part of it is because these people who wrote this, generalizing, of course, they've never suffered. They've never gone through anything. Their suffrage. This is why you see the wokeness. The apparently Gladriel is just this whiny little girl who wants to get everything she wants, and she's the heroine. And she's like, hey, this is what I want. Give it to me. And this is what these people. This is their biggest suffering. Their suffering in life is, oh my goodness, I wanted something, I didn't get it. So that's a good storyline.
Yeah.
And Tolkien, look at Tolkien suffering. Tolkien lost his mother as a kid, got bounced around, was raised by a priest, went to World War I, had almost all of his friends die, and then lived through World War II while he was writing these books. So talk about someone who experienced hardness, and he's a genius, obviously. But I mean, that's a really big difference. And I think that's a really, really interesting commentary.
Yep, that's a big part of the commentary. And then the other thing is, right, the reason his novels became so popular is they're just applicable, right?
Yeah.
He wasn't writing an allegory for anything. He was just basically writing a story around fundamental truths of existence, right? Because he was Catholic, right? You see all these same, whatever you want to call them, archetypes of all his characters and how they, you can apply everything to everything. And that's something that the writers don't have either, right? Their true north isn't the Catholic faith like it was for Tolkien, containing all the truths therein. Their true north is intersectional feminism,
right?
Which is not only wrong, it's just boring and dumb.
Exactly.
And then ultimately that's not what it comes down to, but that's probably why it failed. Like if these writers had made an actual good story, something that was engaging and directed it well and acted it well, it probably wouldn't have done as bad.
Well,
it didn't just do bad because it was not Tolkien.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But people want stories of virtuous characters overcoming great odds, and it doesn't mean that they always have to be this, super virtuous person. The characters in Lord of the Rings aren't, but the principles are virtuous, because if you're not basing them off virtue, look at the main character, Gladriel. And this is even in the lines of the story, at least in the first couple episodes, her primary goal is vengeance.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how did they think this connects with Tolkien? It's just unbelievable. It's like, you think Tolkien would have written something where one of his heroes or heroines was based on vengeance? Really?
Yeah. No, and you look at, the Lord of the Rings and everything, some of the most endearing characters like Boromir, super flawed. You can make flawed characters who are still heroes.
Totally. Yep.
And ultimately they're probably more relatable to us than even like the, Galadriel types, which are supposed to be, basically angels, perfect. But yeah, to go down that road and just make it so modern. Yeah. Right. I mean, this is Batman? Right. Galadriel basically like tiny, weak, annoying Batman.
But it shows you they don't understand culture. They don't understand what Tolkien was, because they can't, because their lives are so different. They have no virtue. They're not basing anything on the Catholic faith or on virtue. And so when they look at Tolkien, they say, okay, there's a character named Gladriel. She was an elf. She was a heroine. Okay, let's build something from that. It's like, no.
Or there's this character, Frodo, and the only reason people like him is because he's tiny and curious and stuff.
And he's got big feet. He's got hairy feet. Yeah,
they've got an equivalent there. It's like, that's what made him, popular.
Exactly.
No, not the fact that he was so self-sacrificing. He basically gave up his life to do this task that was impossible. Right. That's why people like Frodo, not because he's like the short dude with hairy feet. So you can't replicate that.
Exactly.
Or you can't replicate that with today's morals anyway.
Totally. And I think that I'm curious to see. I'm really curious to wrap this all up in a nice bow. I think that the failure of the Rings of Power, in the box office, kind of whatever you want to call it, I think that's going to show up also in the voting. I think people are going to show, if it's fair, And you look at Brazil, look at the U.S. in 2020. I don't know if anything's fair anymore. I really don't. I mean, I don't really trust election processes either. But that doesn't mean you don't go and vote because, well, I
Well, it
mean,
doesn't mean
if
you
you don't
don't go
vote,
and
then
vote.
you're guaranteed not to have an effect on it.
Well, and if that is a huge concern for you, then go volunteer at the clerk and county office, and
Sure,
you know what I mean. That's the mindset we should be having, not the throw up
totally,
the hands. Voting
100%.
isn't fair.
Yep. My brother-in-law is running for mayor of a small town over here in Germany, and is he going to win? I don't know, but you know what? I have huge respect for him because he's like, hey, you know what? I don't like politics. He's with us in most views politically, and he's like, hey, I want things to change, so I'm going to try to
I'm
be
going to do
mayor.
something about it
That's
instead of just
awesome.
whine.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, these people are just like, I hate everything, and I don't like this, and Trump's bad. I'm just going to stay home and not vote. And they complain for the next 2 years about the political system. That's and there's really, I mean, it is a trope. If you don't vote, don't whine, and it's really true.
It's true.
I mean, seriously, if you don't vote, then stay out of it. If you don't want to be part of the political theater, then don't be part of the societal one either, because you know what? They are connected. Yeah. So if you don't vote, and once you start having crazy things come up in your school district or in your in your taxes, or your roads are terrible because no one's going to pave them, well, what did you have to do with that? So I think we're both saying the same thing. Please, sincerely, go out and vote. Educate yourselves. Try, even if you don't vote in the major elections, vote in the local ones, because those are
arguably more important. Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
Yeah.
These local ones, that they're going to impact your streets and your schools and your everyday life more than the ones for senator and governor. They affect it too. So I'd advise for both, but the local ones, be part of it. And as Eric said, totally go. And if you think they're going to cheat, totally go be a watchdog. That'd be fun. Go be like a bouncer then. Get mad out there. Right?
Yeah. Actually, roll up the sleeves,
Totally. Do it. Go be a doer. Be a doer. That is what we're all about on this show. Go do something. Amen to that. Well, Eric, I'm looking forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. Maybe
it'll be fun.
Possibly record something else. And if Matt's still sick next week, then maybe we'll talk about the election results. but I'd love to have you on again. I always love talking with you. And until next time, God bless.
God bless you, Kevin. Thank you.